This is a summary of Chapter 5 from the book Giddens et al. Introduction to Sociology. This chapter looks at social interaction and everyday life in the age of the Internet. Among the learning objectives is to understand the core concepts of the impression management perspective and recognize how we use impression management techniques in our everyday lives. It should help us to understand why we study social interaction and the importance of social interaction in sociology. Um, we will also take a look at ethnomethodology and see how social interaction and broader features of society are closely related. We will look at how face to face interactions remain important in the age of the internet. Roles, status, and social position. A role is an expected behavior of people occupying particular social positions. The idea of a social role originally comes from theater, referring to the parts that actors play in a stage production. In everyday society, individuals play a number of social roles. Or status is the social honor or prestige that a particular group is accorded by other members of society. Status groups normally display distinct styles of life, patterns of behaviors that the members of a group follow. Status privilege may be positive or negative. Social position. Social position is the social identity an individual has in a given group or society. Impression management. Impression management simply is the preparing for presentation of one's social role. Adopting roles. According to James Hensling and May Biggs, they developed a dramaturgical metaphor to describe the phrases or scenes of a woman's trip to the gynecologist. The individual temporarily discards her outside identity and plays the role of patient or non person, and patient again before resuming her outside identity of being female. Audience segregation. People try to keep what they do in each of their roles separate from what they do in other roles. This allows people to have multiple selves. This encourages impression management to selectively portray an image of ourselves to the outside world. Total institutions remove the barriers between the spheres of life and their corresponding lives. For example, here on this platform, I am a professor. With my family, I'm not a professor. With my family, I am mother, wife, um, and the professor does not come into play. As a professor, mother, wife certainly does not come into play at all. Well, perhaps sometimes a little bit. Civil inattention. Civil inattention is a process by which individuals in the same physical setting glance at each other and quickly look away to indicate awareness of each other, but not intrusiveness. Guys, I challenge you when you go on a subway platform or you're waiting for the bus, see how this plays out for you, right? Civil inattention is of fundamental importance to the existence of social life, which must proceed efficiently and sometimes among total strangers without fear. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is based on things such as facial expression or body language rather than language itself. In some cases, our nonverbal communication, also called body language, may convey a message that is at odds with our words. For example, have you ever heard somebody say, I am happy, but you look at their face and you see no sign of happiness? Ah, this is what we're talking about when we refer to nonverbal communication. face gestures and emotions. Although facial expressions and emotions seem partly innate, individual and cultural factors influence what form facial movements take, and the context in which they are appropriate. Internet users have taken up ways to convey emotions without seeing another's faces through textual clues like capital letters. For example, if someone sends you a text with all caps, what are they saying? You automatically imagine that they're shouting at you. Focused and unfocused interaction. Hoping that as you listen to this video, you're giving it the concept of focused interaction as opposed to unfocused interaction, which occurs among people present in a particular setting but not engaged in direct face to face communication. On the other hand, interaction between individuals engaged in a common activity or in direct conversation with one another is considered focused interaction. Over the internet, users have more control over how they are perceived by crafting the message they want to broadcast. So you will see in this online class how you present, especially in the discussions, you are actually crafting how you want your peers to view you. Whether you want your peers to view you as someone who makes substantive posts or someone who makes a minimal post. Haha. Had to try to fit that in there somewhere. Interaction in time and space. All interaction is situated and occurs in a particular space and has a specific duration in time. Time and space is when and where events occur. When we analyze the context of social interaction, therefore, it is often useful to look at people's movement across time and space. Social life and the ordering of time and space. The internet rearranges space because users can interact with anyone without moving from their chair. The internet also alters our experience of time by making communication immediate. Earlier in the summer, my husband and I were in Southeast Asia, and we were able to communicate with friends and family back in the United States, um, bearing in mind that space and time were issues within which we had to navigate. Let's take a look at some theories of social interaction. Starting off with urban government. Now, urban government looks at social interaction, sees social interaction as the process by which we act and react to those around us. Day to day routines give structure and form to what humans do. And according to government, humans act creatively to shape their reality. In studying everyday social interaction, it shed light on the larger social systems and institutions. Then we have Edward T. Hall, who looks at personal space. According to Hall, personal space is a physical space individuals maintain between themselves and others. There are four zones of space. There's intimate distance, personal distance, social distance, and public distance. Intimate distance occurs with family and friends. Personal distance sorry, Intimate distance occurs with families and lovers. Personal distance occurs with friends. Social distance is more formal, and public distance again is where you perform to the audience. Harold Garfinkel looks at a concept called ethnomethodology. Ethnomethodology simply is a study of how people make sense of what others say and do in the course of day to day social interaction. Ethnomethodology is concerned with ethnomethods by which people sustain meaningful interchanges with one another. For example, if you're in a social situation, according to Garfinkel, where, let's say, others are crying. You try to understand what's going on, and as you try to immerse yourself in the situation to understand what's going on, you may find yourself crying very simply because you made yourself available to understand what was going on in that environment. How do we manage impressions on the internet? Wow. Internet users may attempt to manage their image by using things like separate work and home email accounts. However, they still face challenges in audience segregation because messages can easily be copied or forwarded to other audiences. Isn't that scary to think that you send a personal email and that email could be copied or forwarded to multiple persons? Wow. Similarly, using separate social media accounts for different audiences can fail when a simple social media search will reveal content to unintended audiences. Wow, this is something that we're hearing more and more and more. It's almost become a normal part of our living. What happens when dating moves online? 27% of 18 to 24-year-olds have used a mobile dating app or website. App data includes that homogamy, or dating a partner similar to oneself, or hypergamy, the preference for one woman for women to partner with a man with richer socioeconomic resources is still present. One study indicates that rather than placing men and women on equal footing, online dating actually reproduces gender inequality. Interesting, isn't it? And we know that since COVID, um, online dating has now become bigger than life. To what extent can electronic communication substitute for face to face communication? Some researchers conclude that online communication seems to allow more room for misinterpretation, confusion, and abuse more than traditional forms of communication. Internet enthusiasts argue that electronic communication masks identifying markers such as age and gender and focuses attention on the content of a message to the advantage or traditionally disadvantaged group. Compulsion of proximity. People need to interact with others in their presence at some point in time, right? Now, one of the things that we noted with COVID, when we looked at our religious organizations, a lot of our religious organizations moved from the brick and mortar structure of worship and started worshiping online. But the moment COVID restrictions lifted, people flock to congregations, and that's simply because people need to interact with others. According to Deirdre Bowden and Harvey Molotow, they suggest that face to face interactions provide richer information about how other people think and feel rather than electronic communication. This concludes the summary of Chapter 5, Giddens et al. Introduction to Sociology. Thank you.